Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Attic YouTube channel. It's time once again to see what I've added to the video collection. So starting out, this one kind of has an interesting story. Robo War from Severin, not a new release by any means, on Blu-ray. This is one that I'd always meant to get. This is one that at certain times I thought I already had. But I was getting it confused with Shocking Dark, which I do have. Of course, I have this now. But the reason I finally broke down and said, yes, I'm going to just go ahead and make sure this is in the collection is because one night I dreamt that I was on a quest that I had to get this movie. I had to buy this movie. I had to add it to the collection, and nothing was going to stop me. So I woke up and said, okay, I don't believe in signs or fate or any of that nonsense, but I was still left with the feelings from that dream, and I said, yeah, I should just get this to make my entire consciousness happy. So I did. Still haven't watched it yet, but Robo War. Next up, they have been absent from the previous two videos, but they have made up for it. Two new Kino Lorber Film Noir collections, 9 and 10. They both came out in October. So with number 9, I'm presumably to give you some extra before Noirvember. We have Take One False Step, Tangier, and Lady on a Train. And this one will actually upgrade a VHS for me. And that's set 9. In set 10, we get World in My Corner, The Square Jungle, and Flesh and Fury. And so I will possibly get to watch some of these next month in Noirvember. Next month, as I'm recording this will probably be put on YouTube after Halloween. But the final thing that I picked up since the last video, from Third Window Films, this is a Region B Blu-ray set of Nobuhiko Obayashi's 80s Kadokawa years. Obayashi's the director who directed House, one of my favorite discoveries of this year. And I was interested in seeing some more of his work. I recently watched The Drifting Classroom, which I found on the Internet Archive, amazingly. And that was strange fun. And this came up as something that just came out not too long ago. And so I saw it was on eBay for auction. So I took a chance, joined the auction. And I got it, not for a low price, but I got it for a reasonable price compared to everywhere else it's been selling. But this has 4 films: School in the Crosshairs, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, The Island Closest to Heaven, and His Motorbike, Her Island. These are, at least some of them, supposed to have a little bit of that strange reality that you see in some of his other films. Nice looking set. Comes with a little booklet. So I am looking forward to checking some of these out. And yeah, that's all I've picked up, other than what might be tacked on after this, because well, you know, the current economy is pretty tough. Things cost a lot more, so I have been forced to cut back in buying my Blu-rays and DVDs. So future updates will probably be a little more like this, with not a whole lot in the new to the collection part of the video. So to kind of offset that, I am actually pretty happy to make the rest of the segments in these videos a little bit more substantial or more prevalent. That's fine. So hey, what can you do? Anyway, here's everything else I picked up. We got some Hallmark Christmas movie craziness. So for this episode's Pantheon inductees, the Pantheon segment of my favorite films of all time, of course, with Halloween, this being the Halloween season, I had to pick a couple horror movies. So I have two here. The first one being 1945's Dead of Night. This is an early, one of the first horror anthologies. Some say it is the first, although there were some other films before this that did that format. But this is one that's cited as, you know, kind of kicking it off into a higher gear. This has some great segments, one including a dummy, and you know, a ventriloquist dummy, and those are always fun. But this also has, I don't want to spoil it, but it also has an interesting wraparound that when I first saw it, I loved it. Not to say that I didn't love it the second time I saw it. I did. But when I first saw this, I first rented it from my local library, the library where I used to work. Actually, it's not my local library anymore, but it, you know, of course, used to be. On VHS, and I loved it. At the time, I was writing a little column for the newspaper, mostly just new releases. But there was a time when I was trying to do little reviews also, and I wrote about this movie, telling everyone to check it out, watch it. So I had this on VHS previously, and then Kino Lorber did a wonderful thing and put it out on this Blu-ray, and very happy to get this when I did. And it has audio commentary and a documentary about the making of, so fantastic. So if you're looking for some 1940s horror anthology goodness, this is where you should start. This is wonderful. Dead of Night. Second film for today's entries in the Pantheon, we have not maybe necessarily made as a horror movie, but you can't quite watch it as anything more than something that is immensely creepy. Alice, 1989. Jan Svankmajer, if I'm saying that right. Don't let this image fool you. It is only live action for a small piece of the movie. The rest of it is this sort of stop animation, like claymation-ish kind of stuff. And it's as if, I've always described it, it's as if Marilyn Manson made a Alice in Wonderland movie. Other comparisons on the back of here are Disney plus Buñuel, a surrealist dream universe, Alice in Wonderland dark undercurrents, the fears that animate dreams and nightmares. Yeah, all of that is true. This is Alice in Wonderland filtered through a vision of all of that being immensely horrifying. And this particular DVD comes with a bonus short film also by him. But this I first encountered. I'm trying to think where I first encountered this. Maybe it was rented out of a library. I know it was also on Netflix streaming way back when it first began. Way back when you could first do Netflix streaming. But I eventually found this DVD in a Second and Charles used. And I was very happy to, because this movie has kind of always been up there as one of those things you want to show people just to freak them out. So if you would like to watch a totally Halloweenish looking rendition of Alice in Wonderland, this one is for you. So those are today's entries in the Pantheon. Here are the rest of what I watched for Halloween, the month of October, 31 Days of Horror. Okay, it's time to take a look at the rest of the films I watched for the 31 Days of Horror, the second half of October, movies 17 through 31. So the 17th film I watched for October, the 17th horror movie, was Die Monster Die from 1965. This I watched streaming, I believe, on Amazon Prime. It was not too bad. A Lovecraft adaptation. 18th movie was a horror documentary that I picked up recently. Blood, Guts, and Sunshine, The History of Horror Made in Florida, a documentary all about horror films, low-budget films, shot-on-video films, about horror films made in Florida, the history of. That was pretty good. Yeah. The 19th movie. Last time I talked about watching Hard Rock Zombies and Slaughterhouse Rock, so I had to do the the whole trifecta. ROCKTOBER Blood. This one very much a slasher type movie, but with a twist. But again, with a rock band. So this one was actually not too bad. The 20th film was Mountain Devil 2, The Search for Jan Clement from 2022. A documentary, another horror documentary about, Bigfoot related. I had seen the first Mountain Devil documentary and thought it was pretty cool. And I watched this one. I think it was streaming on something. I might have had to rent it. I don't know. But it was also very interesting. A different focus. And by the end of the documentary, you didn't really know much more than when you began, other than learning what the deal was with this Jan Clement guy and the book that he wrote. So not a lot of conclusions, but at least it presented the mystery pretty well. 21st film. Finally got around to watching Rings, the third in the American series of the Ring films. And this one was going along fine until the third act, the last 20 minutes or so, and it really kind of went off the rails. But, not terrible. I was in the mood this month to take the opportunity to watch a lot of Asian or Asian-inspired horror films. So you'll see a lot of those through the rest of the list. Starting with the next three, also known as the Bloodthirsty Trilogy. These are Japanese vampire movies. We have The Vampire Doll from 1970, Lake of Dracula from 1971, and Evil of Dracula from 1974. These you can buy on Blu-ray, and they're in my shopping cart now. My want list, I should say. And they were surprisingly very good. I really enjoyed them, especially Lake of Dracula. Kind of hammer horror mixed with, Japanese film sensibilities. Very atmospheric. Really enjoyed them. Really put me down a path of wanting to see a lot of these kind of films. These are currently streaming on Mubi and Tubi. The Mubi model is to put out a new movie every day. I watched the first two films there. Couldn't wait for them to eventually get around to putting out the third one, and I watched the third one on Tubi. But yeah, they are out there, easily watched, and really cool. Then from 2008, I watched Shudder, the American remake. And, I thought it was alright. And so I then had to watch the original 2004 film from, I believe, Thailand. And of course, no surprise, it was a lot better, a lot more well-rounded in terms of the characters and their motivations. A lot less of the, the shock factor that you get in a lot of American films where they just try to make everything a little bit more splashy, or for example, they try to make the villain a little more, I should say, a little less human, because then it's easier to not identify with him at all. But yeah, so I enjoyed the original Shudder. Then from 1999, the movie I recently picked up, Limbo. Shot on video movie directed by Tina Kraus. This would fall under stream of consciousness horror, kind of abstract horror. I can't say that I totally enjoyed the film, but it did have a lot of things in it that were interesting, being strung together as they were. I can tell there's a little bit more to be mined from this movie, but at any rate, I watched that one as number 27. Then I watched, going back to Asian horror, Pulse, the original, I believe, Japanese Pulse from 2001. And I didn't know anything about this movie going into it. If I had read about it, I didn't remember what it was about. I did not expect it to go to some of the places it went to, which made it really kind of exciting. A lot of the horror in it is very underplayed, which was a choice I thought worked pretty well in the context of the film. I haven't seen the American remake yet. I have a feeling it probably goes the other direction, but I don't know. Haven't seen it, but enjoyed this. Then from this Drive-In Cult Classics Volume 2 collection, I watched The Creeping Terror as movie number 29 from 1964. It is more sci-fi horror, and as I found out, considered to be a pretty bad movie. And yeah, it wasn't very good, and the monster was obviously a very cheap monster. But it wasn't that long, and I got through it just fine. Next up, The Howling 2. Your Sister is a Werewolf from 1985. I have never seen anything beyond the first Howling, which is kind of surprising. But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I did not own Part 2, and I wanted to watch them in order. And I just never have come across Part 2 out in the wild to pick up on DVD or otherwise. And it was on Tubi, so I just watched it on Tubi. And I do own 3 through whatever, so now I've kind of opened the door and can go through those at leisure. But The Howling 2, very very campy, I hear on purpose, but you know, Christopher Lee, is it Reb Brown? Anyway, interesting cast, enjoyable for what it was. And the 31st horror film I watched for the 31 Days of Horror was also on this collection. I went back to this collection to watch a movie from 1963 called Terrified. And this one started out looking very promising. It had a great atmosphere. It had some mystery to it. It had a cool atmosphere. They go to a cemetery, which is always fun. And from there, it just kind of slowed down. Unfortunately, it felt like it dragged, but otherwise it was, you know, pretty neat. It does have an appearance of a young Denver Pyle, who was also known as Uncle Jesse on the Dukes of Hazzard, playing a sheriff, which I found amusing. But yeah, Terrified is my last film. So now that we have the 31 Days of Horror done, I'm going in for the 30 Days of November. So that's where I'm going next. So till then, everyone, enjoy your movies.